So, Yvette Nicole Brown, you are on the new show, The Mayor, on
Yes.
ABC. Take us back to the beginning. What initially attracted you to this show?
Um, I love the idea that it's about a novice who doesn't know what he's doing, but he has a heart for people. I thought that in this political climate, it's interesting to see that side of things, where if someone runs for public office and wins public office, and their goal is to make their community better and to make people's lives better, what would that look like? And then also to get to work with Daveed Diggs and Jeremy Bronson, who created the show, and ABC, those were all big draws.
You mentioned this current political climate, and I mean, taking a look at the first episode again, it's difficult not to see certain parallels to certain people today.
Yeah.
But I mean,
I don't know who you're talking about.
what's so interesting, though, is that, I mean, like you said, he is Courtney, your son in the show, is somebody who has a heart. He is somebody who has to change significantly when he assumes this office. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, he kind of runs for mayor as a joke, I guess. He is a rapper and he wants to get more people to pay attention to his music, so he runs kind of as a publicity stunt, never thinking that he would win. So I believe that Dina, my character, raised him to be a conscious young man and a responsible young man. So when he makes this decision and wins, she tells him, listen, this is not a game. You put your name on a ballot, it means something. You have to show up for these people. And so he has to adjust. And I think playtime ends at that moment. And he starts to become a responsible member of society and realizes that I could really do something great for my people, for my community. So I need to show up. So that's his big shift. And it's not playtime anymore.
Tell us a little bit about your character, his mother.
Dina Rose was a teen mom. She's learned through that experience that it's important to make family a priority, to make achieving success a priority. She's a postal worker. She's raised her son by herself, but she's raised him to be a good young man and a kind young man. She is a force to be reckoned with when it comes to her son. She's very protective. She's kind of the heart of the show, I would say, because I'm like the elder statesman. I've joked that maybe David Spade and Arsenio Hall have me by a few years, but everyone else, I'm the oldest person on set every day of the cast. So she's kind of the voice of wisdom and voice of reason, but she's also a little messy. You know, she's in the pilot, you find out that she finds out some gossip in her neighborhood because she's reading people's mail, and we know that's illegal. So she's not exactly like a complete straight arrow, but she wants to do right by her son and she wants to do right by her community. And once her son becomes the mayor, she wants to actually help him govern. So she's got a good heart with a little mess. That's what I would say.
You mentioned her occupation. I mean, one of the great things about this show is that it's really about people, even with its high concept, as it were, it's about people that we feel like we know, ordinary people. Can you talk a bit about that?
Yeah, I love that Fort Gray, which is our fictional town, it's set on a city in the Bay Area because Daveed Diggs is from the Bay. So it's set in the Bay, but Fort Gray is full of characters and hardworking people, a lot of blue collar people. So I love that our town looks familiar. If middle America tunes in, it's your town. You know these people, you know these struggles. There's simple things like, why don't our bus benches have covers? Like, a lot of people don't have cars and they need to get to work and they'd like to get to work without being wet. You know, it's how do we make sure that the seniors in our city are taken care of? It's things like that that I think affect all of us. And I'm very politically minded myself. So things like healthcare and if supplies for kids at school and whether teachers are able to deduct that on their taxes, things like that matter to me personally. So to get to play a character that the plight of other people matters to her too has been a great blessing, a gift, really.
Absolutely. Let's talk a bit about working with Micheal Hall, who plays your son in the show, Courtney.
Yeah.
What's that dynamic like between the two of you?
You know, it's funny. We're both actors, so we could play mother and son and be convincing. But Brandon and I both wanted to make sure that we had a strong friendship connection. And I think now a love connection as friends that I think carries over to our work as Dina and Courtney. Brandon is Juilliard trained, so, and I am not. So I learn something from him every single day. Like, my scenes with him are my favorite scenes to shoot on the show because he makes me a better actor. Because I don't know what he's going to do. So I have to make sure that I'm completely present, that I'm listening. You know, he might cry in a scene that the script doesn't say cry. So I have to be prepared as his mother to tend to my son's tears in that moment. And that's something that as an actor, you have to be on your toes and ready to do. He's a kind man. He's number one on the call sheet, and this is his first time. It's only his second series, and he's the star. And so there's something about the way you carry yourself on set when you're the star. You set the tone. You decide the kind of day people are going to have by even how you walk on set. That's a lot to put on a 24-year-old's shoulders. But we've been blessed to have a 24-year-old that has the soul of an 85-year-old. So he's walking into it with grace, and he's led us with a steady hand. And it's been just a blessing getting to know him these months I've been working on the show.
You mentioned Daveed Diggs in the show. One of the great qualities of it is the musical element. And can you talk a bit about that?
Well, you may be talking to the biggest Hamilton fan on the planet. So anything that involves any of those wonderful people that created those characters or touring with the company, anyone affiliated with Hamilton, I'm all in. Daveed was one of my favorite characters in the original cast, and he is an amazing rapper. He's an amazing writer. He's a great actor. So when I found out that he was going to be a part and that he was going to create original music every single week, I was like, where do I sign up for this? Just as a fan, to hear the music first. You know what I mean? Like, I just want to hear what Daveed's going to do musically every week. So it's been a blessing. Like, I use that word a lot, and because I feel like this whole experience of this show has been a gift. And I'm so happy that I got to play Dina Rose. I'm happy that I got to work with Daveed and Bernard and Marcel and Brandon and Jeremy. Like, it's just been just an amazing experience.
He's a talented man, that Daveed Diggs. I think he's going places.
Yes, he is. Listen, he may win a Tony someday. We just have to hope and pray that he wins a Tony.
We really do.
He's so talented. Yeah, he's so talented.
Absolutely. So far we've seen 7 episodes from this season.
Yes.
You guys are about to go on a hiatus. What are some of the highlights for your character from these past 7 episodes?
You know, one of the most fun I had on set was when I got to work with Arsenio Hall. He plays Reverend Okoye on the show, and he's recurring, so we'll see more of him as the season unfolds. Arsenio and I went to the same high school, a few years apart. He was in the Warrensville Heights Hall of Fame. So when I was in high school, I would walk by and see his face and go, oh, one day I hope that I can achieve what Arsenio achieved, or I would love to work with him one day. So to get to actually do scenes with Arsenio has been a highlight. David Spade is ridiculous. And I mean that in the best way. I tell people when they ask me what he's like, I say, he is as kind as his characters are snarky. So that's pretty kind. That's a very, very kind man. And we did the first, I believe, 6 or 7 episodes, and we had no scenes together. And we sort of campaigned. And the latter part of the season, you're going to see me and David get to actually work together. So I'm really excited about that. So those have been 2 of the highlights. And then, like I said, getting to know the boys, they're brand new. You know, Marcel, who plays TK, had never done a show ever. All he had done was plays, and he's brilliant as an actor, but he'd only been on stage. Bernard, David Jones, has done a Tyler Perry show and also plays, but this is his first network show. And Brandon had done Search Party, and then this. So they're bright-eyed, and they're untainted, and they're unafraid to try and have fun. And so that's kind of reminded me of my first years in the industry, because, you know, I'm seasoned and old and grizzled. So my take on all the newness of a season and stuff, you know, I've been there. This is my 3rd or 4th series. And so it's nice to get to experience all of this through their eyes, and their wonderful eyes to experience this through.
We talked earlier about the current political climate. And I mean, you know, with this show's subject matter, it's impossible not to think about current events, because they are just so present these days, for better or for worse. Do you guys ever think about that when you're doing this show, or do you just not kind of consider it?
I know for sure that when Jeremy Bronson created the show, he wasn't mindful of what was happening in our nation. He was thinking of people like Chance the Rapper, a rapper who loves his hometown of Chicago and who gives money to schools and wants things to be better. So his mindset was more on what would that be like if somebody like Chance or somebody like Common ran for office. But because I personally, these are my thoughts, not Dina's thoughts, I kind of feel like as a nation, we're in the fight of our life because there's a lot of things happening that I never thought I'd see again in my lifetime. You know, tiki torch marches and walls being built and a lot of division in a country that I always saw as welcoming. So that scares me and it saddens me. So what I love about our show is that we find a way to show that we're all in this together, that everybody matters, every voice counts, and we don't deal with Republican or Democrat. You never hear that on our show, but you can tell who cares about people and who's out for themselves. And you can make your own value judgment about what their politics may be or what they want out of life. But our show makes you root for the ones that think of other people, because you're not doing it right if you only want people that look like you or have the same amount of money you have or are the same race as you to win. You're missing it, especially in America. We are a melting pot for a reason, and that is our strength. So I love that our show celebrates the idea that let's all work together for the common good of all. I love that about our show. So that sneaks in, but no rip from the headlines type politics makes its way in, ever.
There's a lot of hate in the world. There's a lot of love also, and a lot of hope from the mayor.
There's a lot of love also. There's a lot of love also. That's the answer.
Absolutely. You mentioned some of the things that we got to look forward to coming up between you and David Spade. Is there anything else you can kind of hint at that we got to look forward to in the second half of the season? I know you got a couple more episodes before hiatus, but
yeah, there's a beautiful Christmas episode coming up that I think people will really like. There's I'll tease that there's another election that's going to come up that might be interesting to see who's running for certain things. We have Wendy Raquel Robinson, amazing actress who was on The Game for many years. She's coming back. She recurs on the show as Crystal. There's a lot of really fun surprises. A lot of silliness, a lot of wackiness, and there's more music. There's going to be actually music on screen, not just that you can download on iTunes. There's going to actually be more singing actually on the actual show, which is really cool.
Wonderful. You mentioned, I mean, this is your fourth show for television?
Yeah, I believe it. Yeah.
I wanted to, I mean, what are some of the things that you've learned throughout your career that have benefited you leading up to this moment with the mayor?
Well, the first thing I learned, which was on my first show, was a show called The Big House that starred Ken Hart. Way before he became the huge star that he is, was his first show. We got canceled after 6 episodes. We had a 13-episode order and got canceled after 6. That was the greatest lesson I had coming into this industry, because it taught me that every show ends and most of them end before you're ready, you know? So you have to pack light and travel light. So that is the greatest thing I learned from that experience. I've also learned from other shows like Community and Odd Couple, where I didn't have the biggest role on those shows. I've learned that you got to feel your portion of the screen, because someone might look to that corner of on the left where you're standing. Give them something. Never steal a scene, never steal focus. Always let the scene be about who it's about. But there's certain niceties you can throw in. There's facial expressions. There's reactions to what the scene is about that you can give as a gift to the viewer, so that the entire screen is rich. That wherever they look on that screen, they can find something that's worthwhile. So I learned that by having smaller roles on shows. And through The Mayor, I learned, because this is like the first series where I actually have a lot of lines, and I'm actually, a real part of what the show is about. I've learned to be generous when you're the one speaking. Leave space for your fellow actors to have their moments to fill the. Zach, there you are.
Yeah.
I lost you. I don't know if you can hear me, but I lost your picture for a second.
I lost you for a second too. Yeah, you were talking about filling the space and being generous to other actors, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, like just when you're the one that has the monologue, be generous and leave room for your fellow actors to fill the space where they are. You know, give, always give. The answer in acting to me is always give something. Either you're giving something to the camera and to the people watching, or you're giving something to your fellow actors in the scene. And the other thing that I learned business-wise behind the scenes is always live below your means. Always. And this is the greatest lesson that I gave the boys when we started the show. Just because you can buy it doesn't mean you should buy it. Oh, I lost you again. I'll wait. So make sure that you live. If you're a series regular, live like a guest star. If you're a guest star, live like a co-star. If you're a co-star, live like a stand-in. You know, and then you won't have to take jobs you don't want to take when jobs end, because they all end. That's the other lesson. You know, and be kind. Lead with kindness. You know, we're on sets a long time. You know, respect your crew. Be decent. Be kind. Make a room better. When you leave a room, make people miss you. You know what I mean? Don't leave a room and I'm so glad Yvette's gone. No, when you leave a room, like, I wish Yvette would come back. I like having her around. That's the way you're supposed to be on set. Be that person. So those are the lessons that I've learned through the years.
You mentioned Community. That's one of my favorite shows, and Shirley
Oh,
was
yeah.
certainly one of my favorite characters. That was a show that, you're welcome. That was a show that certainly has gained in stature since it's been off the air. And I mean, you think of the number of people like yourself, Donald Glover, Allison Brie, so many others who came from that show and are now doing such great work. I mean, looking back on that, how do you feel about that?
Well, I'm sorry, I missed the last part. What am I looking back? What am I?
Looking back, I mean, what does having that show, having been a part of that show, what does that mean to you?
It's one of my greatest, not even just career highlights, one of my greatest life highlights. I felt like Community was like literally my boot camp. It was my graduate degree in acting. It taught me everything that I know about what to do on set, what not to do on set. Just getting to sit at the feet of Donald Glover and Dan Harmon for 5 years. I've said this in interviews before. Donald Glover is the most talented in every creative area person I've ever met. That sentence was horrible, but you know what I mean. There's nothing creative that Donald cannot do. And so when I see him winning Emmys for directing, and I see him cast in The Lion King, or I see him as Lando Calrissian in Star Wars, or creating Atlanta, none of that shocks me. I'm not surprised by any of it. A #1 album, a #1 song, sure. Like, that's who he is. And I got to sit at a table and watch him create music and characters. And that has been one of the greatest gifts. And then getting to do Dan Harmon's words every week and watch that creative process. I feel like Community is going to, I don't want to put 20 on 10, as we say in the Black community. That means you just add more than you need to add. But I think Community may go down as one of those shows where you go, gosh, all those people were together at once. And I'm not putting myself in that. I'm talking of my other castmates. Speaking of my other castmates, I think it's going to go down as one of those things where everyone will go on to do something so amazing that it's like, they used to sit around one study room table together. That's amazing. And I think that those that didn't maybe catch the show when it first came around, or maybe appreciate it when it first came around, will find it, you know, on Hulu or on DVD, and it'll have an even greater following years from now, decades from now. That's what I believe. It was a great experience for me.
We got another great show here with the mayor, Yvette Nicole Brown. Thank you so much. Congratulations.
Thank you. I had the best time talking to you. Have a great day.
You too. I had a wonderful time talking to you as well. I appreciate it.
Okay. Bye.